How are you, Mr. Jordan? Okay.
Is it okay to put you live yet on YouTube? You weren't live for that, just so you know. But I do want to start it early because if there's any problems, I want to work it out beforehand.
How you doing, Ken?
Good. Things are moving.
So I see
always.
that you have standardized on these LG screens everywhere. Are you happy with that selection?
Having all LGs?
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had any problems with them. We had some issues with Atlona.
Directory stuff.
I don't. There was syncing issues with the Atlona signal going out so far over a Cat5. Sometimes the signal would drop.
We basically had one guy doing it.
But then we got some of their newer products, and those haven't failed us yet. But the LG monitors have been solid the whole time.
Great.
Next
Yeah, I've been looking at them.
He's really super energetic.
I'm not going down the
So
wrong
he
path.
calls.
Right. Okay, you got me on YouTube?
But as he does it, we've been going through and making adjustments on everything. And now we're changing up the sidebar, we're moving the feature listings into the middle, we're moving everything to mobile. Just based on what sort of makes sense.
I knew there'd be trouble.
So it didn't
I
work.
ordered, I just want to let you know right now, I ordered extra security
For today?
for the room.
I want to get you the mic level real quick, though.
This
Let's just put it on to look how this can make sure.
Okay.
That's okay. It's always a different volume.
Do you know anything about
Maybe a
ABBA?
little blink right here, a little bit higher.
I'd like to hear Dancing Queen.
ABBA? It's pretty good. I mean,
Check.
Check. That's
oh, ABBA. I think you said ABBA.
No, that's what you got.
I
Yeah, no,
So it didn't work?
Yeah, you didn't want the
You'll dance for us.
Right? Hopefully. That's why we gave him the clip on, so he could bust a move.
John, one more.
Yeah, we're good.
1,
Thanks.
2, 3, test
If
it.
Mr. Bruce wanders in, and tries to take over, okay, just keep him out of the room.
How's that working out for you?
Carrots.
Ready to go.
They have choices. They have two choices down there.
Cookies and carrots.
Cookies and carrots. Huh?
Speaking of online.
There. Good choice. Yeah, I love carrots.
So I was going to change to Stacey Cody, question mark, where's Waldo?
They look like sugar cookies.
Yeah. Until we got those wheel stoppers.
Man, I want to get fake Google glasses and just glue it on some like cheap glasses.
Yeah.
Like it's just a matter of time someone makes it, right?
You guys are here to be set.
Yes.
In my lengthy amount of time when I was waiting for mine, I started to get to the point where I was like, I'm just going to make a mock-up that looks like them and wear them.
It's the same thing. Same thing. Because you're not allowed by license terms to like let people use them, right? Like other people try them out. So you just have to be like,
I can let people try them on and try a couple of things, but I can't take them out of my presence.
So that you can have wires going.
We'll sit back here. I can't handle the back. But I'll sit in front of you in the row.
Actually, I want someone to make like cheap fake knockoff glasses because I enjoy getting $7 pair of glasses from China. So surely they can make like a fake pair. They made fake Sarah Palin glasses, and that was the thing.
It's for the best ultimately because there's just so many variables that you need like many minds.
And you? Presentation's over, done with. I didn't pass out during it.
It was a short flight.
Were there any fun times?
Oh, I showed Zarda, I showed Fisher Sean Connery in the diaper.
Excellent. No, that's
Old
quality
Sean
design.
Connery in the diaper? 1974 Sean Connery.
Why was Sean Connery?
Because he was in Zardos.
Oh
I
yeah.
have not seen that.
Oh,
I
it's
saw
a
that.
great movie.
So
It's
which
all
Hot
about
Wheel did you
sperm.
get, Tim?
Sperm?
Yes.
That's what they gave away at Hot Wheels, huh?
And it's made by the director of
That's sponsored
Deliverance.
Hug Dolls. They went to
And there's also
Sue, do you have everybody live right now?
Oh man.
Yeah, that would give it to your wife.
John.
Oh, that's so nice. You got the Angry Bird thing.
Give it to
I don't know which one she got.
People are like, oh yeah, he's on Facebook. Well, yeah, I think that was like, listen, you know, if I pass out, my.
So West is giving away these.
Like the first strawberry jellos with lime in the hospital.
Yeah, car charger.
That's good, actually. The bottom of those, now you're getting one.
So
The interesting one is this Clio. They're giving away styluses.
Can you bring that on a plane?
Have they ever done that before?
Is it kind of?
They're so sweet.
Feather knife.
They're kind of,
Feather knife.
well,
Feather.
Made out of plastic.
one of my friends.
Try to explain that TSA.
In high school was trying to
Yeah.
Ozzy and Harriet meets Ozzy.
I'll let you know.
Shove it in your sock and ask for the pat down.
Capacitive.
Yeah.
Oh, it is capacitive.
But right now they're just not walking around the city.
It's a little bit meter, since it's right there by the entrance, meter, right there by the vent.
Good. Not really, not very
Then there
good.
is just a side. See what you can
No, you don't want to go to the field museum.
Going out with
You got that thing.
They're really good. I went last night. Very cool. I think my most favorite
I'm
part
excited
though
about that.
is outside. They have a
It's
brontosaurus
at Willis
with
Tower on the
a
99th
Blackhawks
floor
jersey on it.
reception. The
I like
first
to
90
sell
people
some
show up.
the
They're gonna
RPC
pick it up
online.
to the
Yeah, the
RPC
RPC
back
has
on
a-
They're going on now.
105th floor or something like that.
All I know is that the field museum, they have these stuffed gatekeepers of soft.
I put it in here.
Yeah, the whole basement is basically like.
And I grabbed my Google I/O lanyard because I hate these stupid shoelace things they use over here.
In a page, it's very.
They also have.
Oh,
Is
that's
it
just
sponsored the wings?
Parts of the lanyard, get
That's the one that's
it
down
free your all the way down.
Just next to the tree is further south. They have a submarine and.
Right.
People
That
live
one?
there.
That'd be like the best sponsorship.
The museum
Because everybody'd be worried at the entire
In
stinking
the
time.
stairwells.
Right? Everybody's an advertisement for you.
Cross sections of a real life human being.
Oh, I've heard of that, yeah.
Hey, that was not the most popular thing for my wife.
Kind of surprised nobody's sponsored.
I didn't get a hug when I walked in.
That's the case, doesn't have a booth this year?
No, that was not. Warning.
Oh, you posted a picture of that too.
You coming back here?
Yeah.
Oh, see now I'm really happy. That you get to heckle now.
Right, so.
It's true.
Hey, Sarah, I hear you missed out on some pretty awesome cards in the last session.
Yes.
Are there any extras?
Oh, yeah.
probably not have it.
And, I mean, everyone will be sent. If you're the Cali record, you're so
We
really
do.
see those
We
cards.
usually
But,
we get out.
yes.
With the CDs. Yeah.
Exactly. You guys are just regular CDs, they're really a figure. John will have some.
Okay.
He has.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking that paper cards were kind of low tech for driving innovation.
There's like spikes.
Yeah, it makes sense because I just asked for the DVDs because people might throw it away. They don't throw away the card.
All over the tables. He's gonna lose consciousness.
Sorry.
What?
People will just throw away the little business card, so that's why I asked for DVDs. I'm like, oh, they won't throw this away.
So, I mean, there are usually door prizes at this thing, so if there's like remote control cars,
Remote control cards.
Someone did donate, not remote control cards, someone's donating some sort of.
How are you?
Good.
I know, like this crowd.
Where you going? You're not
there's
gonna say?
iPads, iPads, Chromebooks.
Yeah.
A remote control
I'm gonna go
car.
It's
You're a big one, yeah.
Yeah. People will swap. It's a brand new iPad 3. Star Wars. You can get a ticket?
I didn't realize it was a separate register.
And did you try to ask like for any?
Yeah, I didn't go all the way down.
Oh wait, you didn't realize there was a separate registration for the thing?
For tonight.
I paid this stupid tax because I was like kept clicking and trying to see how to pay $35 after I registered, so I accidentally got 2. So
Hey, John.
do you want to
And then
go?
they said they can follow the
Well, no, but I got 2 and I didn't want to bring a guest.
Good
Do you
job.
want to get a
visual identity guide.
with me? Are you sure? Because I already have to pay the stupid tax, or else someone there has to like spend their precious
Are
time
you
to
sure
like
that it's
refund
an
the
N
stupid
dash
tax.
instead of an M dash?
Are you sure?
Yeah, it's okay, really.
I'm just saying.
Because it would make me feel less stupid
You know, that's one thing I did
about the
not pay
stupid
attention
tax.
It looks a little long, but, yeah.
Yolanda.
I've been calling it
I guess, yeah.
You are not called
My favorite thing was that Kino.
And then
I
I
guess there's
thought,
nothing better to do with this home.
He gets to the end of the keynote and
I'd be happy to analyze that.
he says, and you know, he's talking about
and it's just,
designing, you know, it's
I
like,
can't remember the
don't
font.
think of it
that
as
was
designing a mobile
supposed to
site, mobile.
Either
designing
comments, you know,
website,
designing
but
site,
designing your
alleged.
content.
Or data, or
Calibri, what about Calibri?
For all sorts of
And he
devices,
was
like new
like,
devices,
when
like
did
Google Glass.
Microsoft
Why not
decided to put
comment?
Calibri as the default font. I'm like,
And why is it Google Glass?
Calibri 11.
There's somebody here with glasses?
By our apparel, because there's someone on our apparel that has not seen it. It's font now.
I think
And then then a tweet
I
storm
think if
started.
somebody went to every law school in the United States and magically got rid of WordPerfect, I would be happy.
Oh,
Yes, yes.
that would be so wonderful.
I haven't done it. I don't type email
Prodoc is not helping.
I tried to have it taken out of our public labs, and the Central IT
Measuring the vertical column.
Association won't let me do it.
But we have Prodoc like free of charge, so just ask them.
Yeah.
I would just like to say with the microphone turned on, all
Although
you
I have
need
to
is
just go ask
LibreOffice.
somebody like on our like staff.
Okay.
They
do it after the
don't
next
know the
session.
difference.
Yeah,
I mean, you downstairs is one
yeah,
side.
because otherwise, yeah. Okay, downstairs where?
Well, now, I just wrote to OIT and I said, look, you can take WordPerfect out of the public labs, because we haven't taught a class on it in 3 years. We don't intend to. And I thought they would be
Nice,
thrilled.
got a Google Glass
And
where-
they said, oh no, we have people that
Maybe
are
give us
using it.
directions. Who has the glass? Do they know about the Illinois wiretap glass?
On those public things for
So
however long I've had it up now.
WGBI, need that, Nick Roy?
They haven't said a word about that. They don't know the difference.
They don't know they're not using a Microsoft.
Nice save.
Someday, everybody will have.
Well, sometimes.
No.
We're really
Oh,
strong
it's
back
time.
so.
It's
Have them or
2:30.
something
All
like
right.
that, right?
I'm going, John.
Thank you all for coming. Carol, you can stay.
So,
I'm not staying.
It's to Cody, right? I'm not a Cody.
It is, it's Cody.
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon. My name is John Jorgensen. I am the director of the library at Rutgers University School of Law in Newark, at least for the time being. I guess I'll be the library director at Rutgers School of Law, Newark campus. And I'm here to talk about New Jersey statutes, maybe done a little better. What I should start out with is why I'm doing this and why it has any significance to anybody beyond somebody fiddling around with things in New Jersey. I got semi-asked to do this, at least a little bit challenged to do this, several months ago, actually near the beginning of the school year. I think it was October. And I had a meeting with some people at the New Jersey Law Revision Commission who were getting ready to implement the New Jersey version of ULIMA, the Uniform Electronic Legal Materials Act. See, I know it now. And they had no idea how to go about doing this. They were gathering lots and lots of information. They have a really good draft bill at this point. But we started talking about things like the cost of converting over to systems where you actually start seriously thinking about and acting on things like curation of data, which is something that the state doesn't do, which most states don't do, which most digital librarians don't do a whole lot of. And it's something that I've been thinking about for years. And so I was talking to the Law Revision Commission about what kinds of things would have to happen with databases like the online New Jersey statutes that the state of New Jersey makes available. And the biggest thing to come up with over and over again was objections from the legislative people who take care of that database is cost. They can't do it. It would be prohibitively expensive to do all the hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of things that need to be done in order to make that happen. Oops. So that's what I was dealing with at the very beginning. And after listening to this, after talking to them about the way things worked, and just to show you what we're really dealing with here, that's mine. And here's the cool New Jersey Legislature website. And they have the statutes, which is actually the New Jersey Code. And here they have a wonderful setup here, which is actually very difficult to use and to go through. The search function is bad. It lumps things together. The pagination is a little bit catch-as-catch-can and a little bit guessy. And if you're into such things, you'll see that ISPI thing, which you can't really read from where you are, but this is folio views, and it's still in use in New Jersey, and they will not give it up without a big fight. So that's a little bit unique to New Jersey, but is that kind of attitude unique to New Jersey at all? I don't think so. I mean, attitude may be unique to New Jersey generally, but yeah. So, that's what we were dealing with. And we were told there's not much you can do. And then a certain person who I will not name, who works for the New Jersey, well, somewhere in New Jersey government, I don't want to get more specific than that. In fact, he does not want me to. Pointed this part of the legislature's website out to me, that there was this little link here called download. And then we clicked on that, and we clicked once more, and all of a sudden there was the New Jersey statutes made available daily as a download. The only problem with it, well, they were doing it because they were mandated to do it by someone, I don't know who, but they had to make it available online. So this is the way they did it, in the form of a single ASCII file. And that's what they have available. And so that's what we're looking at right here. It is 63 megabytes, and somebody can download it every morning, whenever they feel like it. And that's when I started thinking, can we do this better? Can I show the Law Revision Commission that this can be done for cheap, if not free? And then I started going through it. It's a question of text processing. The big advantage to doing this project is more than most codes, the New Jersey statutes is very, very regular in its structure. It can be a little weird in the actual numbering system. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But it's always title, and then a colon, and then the chapter, and then a dash, and then a section number. Now what that section number actually consists of, be it numeric, alphanumeric, or some combination of going back and forth, is another question, which again I'll talk about in a minute. But the formatting was pretty regular, and that ASCII file itself, it's not 16 megabytes, it's actually 63 megabytes, is very highly formatted, and it's also completely sequential. There are several errors in it, but it was meant to be sequential. So what can we do with it? I'll get to this stuff in a minute. Let's talk about what we had to deal with here. So if you just look at the beginning of the file, you can see there's something here, and these numbers here are added by the text editor. That's not part of the file itself. But everything starts out with a section all the way over at the margin with that title, colon, chapter, dash, section number, and then a name, if there's a name, and then everything else in tabs. So what you really need to look for is the word title in all caps, and then a space, and then some characters that will start with a number at least. and grab what's just after that, after some spaces, and you've got your titles. After you get a title, you'll start getting sections, and every section you will get, the very first thing will be the first chapter as well as the first section, and then we just keep on going through the file. So we're here at Title 2B, Chapter 12, 30.1. Never mind that it's a .1, let's just keep going. And eventually you can parse, in theory, the entire file. The way I structured this was into 3 tables. A table of titles, a table of chapters, and then a table of sections. Very simple, very clean, very easy to deal with. The only real problems I had with it were things like errors that were in the text itself, such as (18A 71C-22). We got a whole lot of things like this, which were making things kind of a pain in the neck to deal with. There were also errors that went through, and from what I can see, my guess is that the ASCII file is actually the master file, and it gets slurped up into folio views and parsed by the folio view software. I'm not sure about that.
So which one is considered, if you were to ask the New Jersey state government, the official, is there an official online version?
No. There is no official online version. They put all kinds of disclaimers over their online version. And this is actually derived directly from the version that they have disclaimers about. And in fact, that is exactly what the New Jersey implementation of ULIMA is going to directly address, is that they're going to have to do something coherent with this. They're going to have to start, and with code material, it's a problem, right? You can't just, it's not like posting court decisions, because court decisions stay the same. You may have to edit them, there may be a correction to be made, but that replaces the document. But when we're talking about code sections, you're talking about material that by its very nature is going to be replaced on a very regular basis, but that what has been replaced is still legally relevant and should be maintained. Actually, it has to be maintained. So you need a whole different system for taking care of it, which they're not doing right now, because they've just used folio views, and they've used it for maybe 20 years now, and it worked great for them, for their own purposes. But when you're starting to talk about real curation, keeping track of your data, keeping MD5 sums and digital signatures of your materials so that you can verify it as authentic and non-corrupt over the years as you go through various versions of software that'll handle it, that's a problem. So what do we do all about that? That's what I really wanted to do. The first step was to think about parsing this. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because I don't want to get too codey. But just looking at the structure of this, you can see that it's pretty regular and pretty easy to predict. And then you see things like this problem here, and that's something that happens throughout. And there are also instances where an older statute had been misplaced, so it wasn't in the proper place. And then when they put in a revision of that section, they put the revision in the correct place, so now there's 2 versions of that section in different places within the code. That was a pain. And there were various problems like that that came up. What I eventually did in order to take care of them is just going through them one by one. And here's part of the error correct. You don't have to look at this, but there was about 24, 25 errors. Now, when you're talking about 500,000 lines of text, it's a lot to wade through, but you have to wade through it once. And then after that, once the error correction routines are hand-coded for each one of those errors, every now and again something else might pop up, but generally speaking, it's going to run real smoothly from then on, as long as they haven't fixed anything, which they're not going to. So it works pretty well at this point, and that's what I'm doing. So what did I want to have for this? I wanted quick and intuitive browsing, which we don't have right now. We want permanent versioning with links to the older material, which is something that's absolutely essential if you're going to start talking about taking things like ULIMA seriously and just data curation in general seriously. And just if you're going to serve the public properly, you need to have links to the older version of the law. We also wanted to do some linked data stuff with links to the session laws, links to legislative history if possible, because a lot of that is online in New Jersey through the state library. We wanted it to be searchable, and the last thing is dealing with repealers in a useful manner, which I about have done. The repealers are actually, that was the last thing I just recently took care of, and it was a pain in the neck because the way it's handled now on the state website and in that text file that I've been downloading every day is that when something gets repealed, it just disappears from the text. There's no announcement, there's no label on it saying that it's being repealed, it just disappears. And so if you just go through it, it'll stay in the database and stay looking current, even if it's not there anymore. So, errors and inconsistencies in the text was something I had to deal with. There was a lot of ordinality problems to deal with. I needed to deal with repealers and reorganizations. Reorganizations is something I still need to do. I'm going to wait until it happens, and then I'm going to deal with it. But ordinality. What I mean by that is the basic numbering system. And if Bruce was here, he likes to talk a lot about the real pain in the neck nature of man-made legal codes, especially American man-made legal codes and their numbering systems. When you start talking about sections, each title of the code is going to have its own numbering system. Each chapter is probably going to have its own numbering system. And that numbering system can take any of a wide variety of systems. And a lot of them actually switch back and forth between a numerical numbering system and an alphanumeric numbering system, which is very difficult to keep track of, and it's really difficult for an SQL database to order properly. More to the point, it's impossible to make them order properly. So here's the problems we had with errors in the text, things not formatted as expected, multiple items out of sequence. But ordinality, this is actually how I initially took on the problem. Might be easier to look at this. So when you're looking at, this is our interface now. So you can put in a citation right here. You can do a full text search, or you can scroll down through. And it's got the whole code there. So if you click on a title, it's going to drill you down to chapters, most of which actually don't have names. This actually has more names than most of them. And that will give you section numbers after that. Now, this one's pretty straightforward, and I'm not going to go looking around for something with wacky section numbers, but I'll leave it to your imagination. But this page here, and this CGI script, which is querying the database, it's saying, give me every section that's got this chapter and this title, and then order them and show them to me. In this case, it's very straightforward because you can see all those section numbers are, in fact, numerically ordered. Nice. But, for example, there are letters that are often attached after the end of those numbers. Those letters can be multiple letters. You can go from letters or numbers and then a decimal point, or what looks like a decimal point and is actually just a dot, and then more numbers, and then sometimes letters after that. And again, getting a database to order these was almost impossible. Actually, it was impossible. So what I eventually did in the CGI script that you were just seeing the results of before, the way I did it was to do post-processing. I just queried the database, and I didn't worry about ordering the section numbers right then and there. Pulled everything to an array, split everything up, particularly with those decimal points and the numbers and letters after the decimal points. Those numbers after the decimal points were actually alphanumeric and not numeric. Does everybody know what I mean by that? So that like 11 comes before 2. But to make that order properly, the way to do it was to split everything apart and then just use a can function to pad everything with leading zeros. And so everything was a 4-digit sequence with leading zeros, padding it, and then I could order that, and what you split off the letters that might be at the end first and save them. Then you order everything numerically, or excuse me, alphanumerically, and then you put everything back together, and then just before you display it, you strip out all the leading zeros again. And that's actually what was happening on that web page that you saw. So it actually works, and there are ways to do that.
This is just from curiosity for jQuery, like tables library you can sort. Did you try doing that?
No, I'm not using jQuery.
Okay, I didn't know. I did the Florida administrative code, and it's not sorted right with SQL. So that's what someone had said to do, but I didn't have staff time to do it, so I didn't do that.
I suspect though, even if you're using something like jQuery, you're still going to, if you're keeping it in some kind of database form, if you're doing it this way, where you're just storing the data that comes, the title, chapter, and section number, ordering it is still going to be problematic, even with jQuery. You know, because there's no order to it as far as the database is concerned until you tell it what you want, even if it's jQuery. So anyway, I got it working with what I was just talking about there. And then I realized that it works pretty well as long as you have something like decimal, decimal, and maybe one letter. But then sooner or later, they're going to get up to Z with something that's got numbers and letters, and they're going to go to AA after that, and the whole thing will get screwed up again and need some kind of double ordering or triple ordering system. And that makes my head hurt, and it gives me a sad. So the real way to take care of this is to completely give up and not bother figuring out what the hell these human beings were doing with their section numbers. And years ago, I was trying to deal a little bit with the US code to try and make some sense and parse that. And it parsed pretty well, but again, the ordering system was even worse in the US code. It's impossible to deal with in a rational manner as far as computers go. But the way to do it is real simple, is to give up. And to create one extra column in the database called sequence number, or sequence, whatever, and then order on a sequence number. Now, I can do that in this case, and I can do it pretty easily just because they've given me this gigantic 63 megabyte ASCII file. That's the key to the whole thing. They're doing it because they don't want to make it easy for anybody to do anything with the code. You've just got this big mess. But it is a sequential mess. And that makes it really easy. I ran it all through again, and this time, as I ran it all through, and as it recognized each section by looking at the formatting and finding all the sections, which the parser was already really good with, it just assigned a sequential number. And now I have sequence numbers for everything, and very simply redoing the MySQL queries that give you all the results to sort on the sequence number, and everything comes out straight. It also makes it real easy to code a paging mechanism as well. I already had one that keeps on going through and doing subsequent queries, and that was a fairly complex query because you have to take account of when you get to the end of a chapter or the end of a title. And so you have to do all kinds of things. I mean, you have to keep it straight so you're jumping to the next title as you should. But if you've got a sequence number for every single section in the entire code, it all works just fine. You just have a very simple query that says, give me the next one in the series. The only thing you have to really be careful about is to make it a not an integer. You got to make it a float or a decimal, because every day I'm getting a new download of this, and at least twice a week there are new sections being added or sections being replaced, and I have to make sure that I can add numbers in between. But that's an easy function just with the parser. So I'm saying if you, all it does is as it finds new sections, it's always keeping track of the one it just found previously. And then if it finds something that it hasn't seen before, it says, is this one new? Make sure it's not messing up or there isn't some mistake. And if it is a new section that hasn't been in the database before, it then jumps, it takes the section just before, queries for the one that comes just after, and calculates an average, and then you've got a new sequence number. And it can do that indefinitely, just by making god-awful long decimals that we don't care about because we'll never actually see them. And that's how I'm doing ordinality and keeping the whole thing in proper sequence. So repealers were a problem because the text file merely dropped sections, even, and this was a problem too. Section 42, chapter 2b, for example. The whole thing is technically repealed by statute, but the repealer does not actually take effect. Let's take a look at it, shall we? Let's. So here's Partnerships and Partnership Association, Chapter 2b. And if you look at this, you'll see a note. This is not part of the original text. It's something that I insert in here. There's a bit of code that inserts it in here, saying the section is repealed. But you'll notice that it's only being repealed in March 1st of 2014. This is a huge problem because this is still an active law in the state of New Jersey, but it's disappeared from that daily text file download because a repealer was passed. And as soon as they identified it as having been repealed, it drops out. It doesn't matter what the effective date of the repeal is. And that's what the state is putting on its own website. Not that they irritate you. So, a little of a pain in the neck to handle. I have my parser. I download the file every day, which is subject to change every day at around 10 in the morning. It parses out and tries to find new sections. When it finds new sections, we get them added in. Anything that's changed, we add it in. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about it in a second. And then As it finds those sections in the text file, it makes a god-awful long array and keeps a giant list in active memory in the parsing program. And then once it's done parsing the file, I then do a query of the database of all the sections that I have in the database. And then we go through and we compare one by one. It takes about 10 minutes for the, actually, no, it's more like 5 minutes for the program to run. And it goes through and it finds everything that I've got in my database that's no longer in the text file. And then it writes it out to an error file and notifies me that there's an error file. At that point, I can look it up. Quite frankly, I look it up in Lexis and Westlaw. And I see what the heck is going on with the thing, and I usually find information that it's being repealed. And then I've got one other table called the repealer table, which I input the title, chapter, and section number, the law that is repealing the thing, and the effective date. So it's one more table with those bits of information. And then when somebody clicks on a section, this CGI script that's showing the actual text of a section before it actually displays the text of the section, it also does a query of the repealer table. And if there's a hit on the repealer table, it just puts this line in there in nice red text. So we've got repeal data in there. And that'll just stay as it is. The only thing I have to worry about is when they start reusing the sections after the repeals take place. I haven't dealt with that yet. Yes?
So what, I guess maybe you just address this. What happens on the day it gets revealed?
It's going to stay just like that.
Okay.
But it'll keep on being marked repealed in red text, and people can look at the red text and see what's going on. Part of that, too, is a very important part of what I'm doing is taking care of versioning as well. Every time I run that parser, it does not replace material. What it does is, as it goes through, it matches and matches and matches. And if things are absent, well, here's what it does. It finds the beginning of a section because it's formatted over at the margin and it's got the citation there, title, chapter, and section number, just like I was showing earlier. And then what the parser does is it grabs the body, the next couple of lines until you get the next section, and that's the body of that law. It then takes that, creates a copy of it, strips out all punctuation and white space, and then it does a query of the database for the most recent edition that I have in the database already. It takes the body of that text, strips out all the punctuation and white space, and we can talk about that if you want, and then runs an MD5 sum on both of those blocks of text. And if the MD5 sum doesn't match, then what it does is it comes to a screeching halt, displays both of them to me, and asks me whether it's actually new or an error. And then if I press yes, what the program does is it takes the new thing, which is now a new bit of, an amended piece of text, and it sticks that into the database as a new version of that code section. And when it does that, it timestamps it. So it doesn't replace the old version, it just adds. And at this point, there are some sections in there that have 2 or 3 versions of the same thing, each one separated or distinguished by a different timestamp. And then when you actually look at a code section, you can, I don't know if you can read this down here where it says older versions. If there was an older version, it would have come up in the database query and this is the most recent version that's displayed, anything with an older timestamp, there'll be a little button there. And it'll say, click for the version we added on this date, click for the version we added on this date, and you can go back as far as we've got stuff for them. Yeah?
Why are you stripping punctuation?
I don't really have to strip punctuation, I just did. The white space is what really makes the difference.
Well, yeah.
Because white space can vary for no good reason whatsoever. And for some reason, I was finding tiny little differences that made things look weird.
So it's different quotes, single quotes or something like that.
Yeah, and I don't know why. What seemed to be happening sometimes is that sometimes somebody would have made a very, very minor edit to a code section, like changing something from single quotes to double quotes, or changing the style of double quotes. I don't know. But it was driving me mad for a little while. Because I would look at two new things, you know, the parser would stop and say, these two things are different. And I would look at them, and they would both have the same enactment information at the end of the sections. And I would look at them, and I couldn't tell the difference at all. I get better results when I'm also stripping out the punctuation.
Have you considered running, instead of just displaying both and having it ask you which, if it's new or just an error, have you considered just passing it through diff and having it show you what the changes were?
Yeah, in fact, I should do that.
I would also think it would be neat here, kind of Wikipedia style, is if when you click that older thing, actually have a link here, say what's changed, and pop up a visual diff tool and show both.
That would be good. That's in my to-do list now.
You're welcome. No.
Yeah, I'm not sure I should say thank you.
That was why I was sarcastic. You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, this is going back to something you were saying before, but you have a bunch of code in there to weed out errors that seem to be like technical, glitches or whatever with the code. I'm wondering why you wouldn't be able to just call somebody in New Jersey and say, yeah, that's like, hey, this thing's in there twice, can you just get rid of it? Instead of having to, every time you parse the thing, just go through and, like are they not even receptive to catching, typos?
Have you,
Beautiful, Tim.
have you been to New Jersey?
Beautiful,
I-
pure naive Tim.
I work in Rutgers, in fact.
No, I mean, that's the first thing I did.
And they don't...
The first time I went through this, and I wrote the parser, and the way I came up with all of these error correction little bits here, this is just part of it. And I don't want to explain them. If somebody really wants me to, I will. But when I first went through, I went through assuming everything was fine. And then every time everything blew up by having it was a key violation in the tables because things would come up apparently twice, quite a lot. Or they would come out of sequence. So you'd have something from chapter 2 and then chapter 2A, and then back to chapter 2. And that was an error, right? And then the parser would stop, and I would look through it, and I would find what the heck's going on by looking through the text file, and then writing a little error correction routine, either correcting the typo, or just moving things, well, doing whatever needed to be done, right? And as I was doing that, I made a lovely little spreadsheet with description and line numbers within the ASCII file and everything. And then I sent it to them, and they didn't actually say bad words or anything to me, but
You just never got a response?
it was not responded to. There is a person in the New Jersey government who was very thankful for the information and who has been in contact with me since then about things like this. But that's it. I also talked to them about things like links to the New Jersey legislature's legislative history data so that we could make immediate links to that material as well, and got nothing back. I was trying to screen scrape it, but they have some weird sessioning thing going on with that, and I can't figure it out on my own. So there you go. So, yeah, so I check it. If there's an error, my thing will blow up again, and I'll write a new error correction routine. As it stands right now, the way I thought about doing it was doing the MD5 sums and doing a nice check, and it works pretty well. I've got all the sections. We've spot checked and taken samples all over the place, and it's coming out right. And in fact, it's more accurate than the state's version because I do the error corrections. Because the errors that I'm coming up with here and correcting are things that are in the online version from the state right now. So that their errors are there. And when they repeal something, it drops out of the New Jersey Legislature's online version, even if it's still in effect for, as you saw, a year. They just take it out. But Western Texas have accurate versions. So, you know, everything's fine. So what was I talking about? I was talking about the parser. I was talking about comparing, and I was talking about versioning. Did I say everything there was to say about versioning? Yeah, the timestamps. The timestamps are absolutely crucial because that way everybody can see what's happened in the past. The other things that I wanted to do was links to as much stuff as I could. And you can see a little bit of this right here. Part of what you can see here, and this is just using some regular expression code on the fly as I call things out to try and make links to material. The New Jersey Legislature has their session laws online going back for several years. I think 97 is when they started doing it. So, and as you can see from their CGI script, you just need a year and a chapter number for the New Jersey session law. So it's an easy way to just use a regular expression and then plug into their CGI system and be able to make nice, quick little links to their session laws, which is a really nice thing to have. So all of these things work. If this is earlier than theirs, this will make to a link to something that we did back in Camden several years ago, which was scanning all of the New Jersey session laws in Fiche, and that's available here. This is harder to use, as you can see. This is all images scanned from Fiche, but you can page through, and you can actually, this is 2,216 pages. You can navigate through it pretty easily and find what you're looking for. So, I mean, you can see the chapter numbers on the top, and you can pretty much bounce through the pages here as if it was a book. So we're on page 2000, chapter 375. We're at chapter 163. And yeah, is it a little inconvenient? Yeah, it is, but it's the best we could do for free, and it actually works pretty well. So we've got the session laws. If I could easily and quickly find something that had a legislative history available, which I may or may not be able to do easily. I'm not going to bother with that right now. But if there was a legislative history for this section that was on the state library website that I could get to easily, there would be a link to it there as well. Again, just short database query, link inserted, So not only do you get the statute, you get the legislative history as well. Because why not? Why not? So, any questions?
Does Wes and Lexus, are they following the day-to-day updates and things like that? And do they have any issues also with sort of the removal of certain parts of the statutes that are still in force? Although
I don't think they're using this as their source. I think they're doing something else.
so they have like their own code that they're writing themselves? Or?
I think they are. For New Jersey in particular, and a lot of states kind of do this in one form or another, when they issue new session laws, there's marginalia saying what code section, where everything's going to be codified. And if West or Lexus is actually doing the code themselves, which sometimes they do, they're parsing it themselves, however they do that. But I think that's what they're still doing, because it's up faster and it's up more accurately than the source that I'm getting.
Okay. Do you know if they have something you can go back by date to get the one that was, like from 2 months ago or 4 months ago? Or is that like you could do possibly with your system here?
I don't think you can. It's not that easily. Not with code sections. Does anybody know better than that, than I do on that?
Lexus and Westlaw for almost every state is going to be annual, and it'll just be, you have to look at what date each year they do it, and then you have to check your session law to see if there were changes in between. Or you check the next year and look at the history note.
Okay.
But yeah, they'll let you search historical, but it'll be annual.
Historical. All right.
Yeah, so they don't have this. And quite frankly, now that I've got it set up, it's always going to be run like this. And over, 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a lot of versions of all kinds of things. And it's going to be very easily kept straight because the timestamp's the timestamp.
Right. I think that's a much higher value from, you just pick a date, and this is what was in place at the time. It's hard to track session laws.
Yeah, it's very hard. So, and that's what we make lawyers do typically, because that's the way we've always done it. But why not be better?
Why not?
Why not curate the damn stuff? Right?
Kafka is a government lawyer. Right. Yeah.
So the last thing I've got here is we do court decisions. We get a court decision feed every single day. And in those court decisions, they talk about statutes. So why not have links between our versions of the court decisions and our versions of statutes? And that's what's here. This is probably going to come up with nothing. But if there would be something. This is something that I want to improve, had not had time to do yet. So what I'm doing here is, if you look at the CGI script here, we use the Swishy search engine for our court material. And what we're doing here is, as I get New Jersey, I know what the title, chapter, and section number here, so I know what the citation looks like that's going to be in the court documents. And so I just make a Swishy search for that code citation within the court documents, and we see what we come up with. Is this good? Well, it's okay. It's pretty good. What I would rather do, but again, just haven't had time to do yet, is write something else which goes through the court documents using a proper regular expression, which will be a lot more reliable and a lot more accurate than the Swishy search engine, and make another gigantic database table. And make a proper index of all this that can be maintained every day when we get new court decisions in. And that will make a much better annotator, an automatic annotator for these code sections. And if I do that, quite frankly, instead of just having this little click here button, I'll be able to display those cases on this very page with the caption, the date, and maybe a little squib, a highlighted squib even, with a summary of the case, which will be a lot more useful. But that's to come still. That and dealing with recodifications, when they move entire sections of the code in different places and all the numbers change. So it cost me about 3 weeks worth of my time, a couple hours a day, getting it all coded up. It's done with MySQL and Perl scripts, and that's how much it costs. So, and I'm still in contact with the New Jersey Law Revision Commission, telling them that that's how much it costs, and showing them how easy it is to use, and how better it is, and how we're actually keeping track of everything. I didn't say also that as I download everything every day, that 63 megabyte text file, we're stored in keeping a MD5 sum of the download, so that we can keep track of what we've been dealing with. I have no idea what they do with those text files from day to day when they replace the old one. I would think they save it. They probably don't. I would hope they save it. They probably don't. But, you know, that's the best curation I can do. It also helps me because it makes my job a little quicker, because I download the new text file every day, and when I run the MD5 sum on the text file I've just downloaded, I compare it with the MD5 sum of what I downloaded yesterday, right? And if those MD5 sums are the same, I'm done for the day. And so half the time that's what I get, and it makes my life a little easier. I don't have to check anything, I don't have to run the parser. So, that's what I got. This is something you can do in your home.
Why would I want to Jersey statutes on that?
Yeah,
quite frankly,
I'm sure we'll be doing it.
If I do something like this, I'm always willing to give it to anybody who may want to look at it. Anybody at all can. And you can start doing this on your own. I mean, people are talking nowadays, at least in the Twitterverse and whatnot, about this state decoded. And people trying to do a lot of stuff with codification material, which I think is extraordinarily important. What I worry about is whether they're actually addressing things like versioning and curation. And I've asked people, and I'm not getting great answers on it so far. I hope they're doing it. But what, quite frankly, is what seems to be happening right now, and again, if somebody knows something better than that, please tell me. But what I see happening is people getting an online version and then getting it parsed and online, and then challenging the government to make bulk access available or to do it better themselves. It is a very important step to take and a really important thing to do. But you gotta have something written that will take care of it every day, because the day after you do it, it's out of date. And you have to have an ongoing system that'll take care of the new stuff every day it comes out. That's the thing I was really worried about. That's why this system is a little different than what you've seen, that what State Decoded, I think, is doing, and what a lot of other people are doing. And it's what's going to make it more useful in the long run. And again, I'll give it to anybody. Yeah.
How much of this requires intervention from you every day, and how much of it is automated?
Because it's how I roll, I run the downloader myself every day, and I don't need to. I could put that in a cron job and have it run at like 11 o'clock every morning, and then send me a message if those MD5 sums don't match. So there's that. When I run the parser, the only human intervention the parser requires, and I do it just out of caution, I don't think I really even need to do it anymore because I haven't really run into problems in several months now. But the only human intervention is if the MD5 sums of the section bodies don't match, it stops and asks me whether the thing's new or not. And then what I see is either the old version is blank, in which case I have a brand new section, or it's got two different versions. And you know, at the very end of any code section, it's always got the enactment statement. So it actually makes it very quick and easy to compare. You look at the bottom of the old one, and it says something about 1998, and the new one will say 2013, chapter something very recent, right? Because they just finished dealing with it. And you just see that and click yes. And all I've been doing for the past couple of months is going why every time I run the parser and it stops. For the most part, it just flips everything through and then re-indexes the search engine. And then every now and again, I will get a little message that there's something in the error file saying that something dropped out of the code. And then I have to take a few minutes to look that up and see why it dropped out, whether there's an error or whether, as is much more likely, there's a repeal, and then put that information in. So, 5 minutes? That's my time, if that.
What's the NoSQL thing that was in the description? Because this isn't SQL, right?
This is in SQL. Did I say?
Yeah, it said something in the blurb for this. It said something about NoSQL. Not that blurb. The blurb that was on the Cali website. The Cali website. Like maybe it was like plans to do NoSQL and that got left for some reason.
Or Elmer's just kind of something.
That got left.
Okay.
It is something that I'm thinking very hard about because I think this would actually function much better in a NoSQL system than an SQL system. For my own political purposes, dealing with the people in New Jersey, I needed to get this up in a couple of weeks when I first started working with it. And so I did it in MySQL because it was quick and easy. I think one of the things I want to do over the long term, and it will help me do a bunch of things much easier, is to actually put it in a triple store. I think it's a much more appropriate storage mechanism for code material anyway. And you can sort it in all kinds of ways that you can't really do it this way. So sooner or later. I know that's disappointing, but we should talk more about that.
I know SQL. I don't know what the triple store is.
So, but I am thinking about it. I will do it at some point. Well, thank you all for your time.
They take out the section, and then like you take it out. That's fucking insane.
It's still a law, but you can't read it.
It's not in the code. I mean, it's like,
She doesn't actually take it down.
I think this stupid taxes, they just got $30 in the email, and I was like, looking through your account, they haven't paid it, and they were like, you should get it.
Candy bars! Candy bars!
It's sad because I got.
Were there some?
So there's tweeting about candy bars and running out of the session to get candy.
Okay. Right, back.
It's
part.
A lot of things that we have.
How do you like the water?
And I guess that's probably good.
I don't know if I actually formally introduced myself. I don't know if you realize it's nothing.
We are.
You think it's on a shoestring? I'm thinking you figure out how to
Florida,
do
these
At
statutes
LPI,
go
we
over
have
actions annually in these
Yeah.
Yeah, like you basically
I
don't
think it
have
was
to,
the
you just
hazard
have
that
this.
was mostly.
You're actually able to do this and go back, and so you're not dealing.
Congratulations. I would have people. You like the system?
Well, half of it was Minnesota's.
Well, you know what I mean, I think
That's,
I'm
The other
I
half.
know, that's what they can't send in the.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we've got serving right now.
Especially now that since it's surgery, I can't have
That's
surgery.
sad, because I wouldn't have, otherwise, like, it's already. Like, I asked. Yeah, you probably just.
Okay, can I walk slowly back with you, that I want to make stop in the restroom?
Well, you have to do that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, I just want to make sure that it's not a person or whatever.
Well, that's another thing I can say. I figured it would work very nicely and didn't hear after about a month. One guy who's very nice to me, who worked in the
I like this plan. I like this plan a lot. I understand, I understand bureaucracy, but it's a typo, for God's sake, right? That's all it is. They go in there and they add that stuff every day, do other things, and add more things, or whatever.
Apparently there's a
And it's with the stigmatism, even before I had the rest of
And that's the library,
so that they're taking over.
Actually, it just.
Yes.
Aside.
Yeah.
Director of the contract I worked for.
Yeah.